three. One, I believe in more universal values. So my parents came to Canada and disagreed with its values in many ways. My father, for example, was an ardent NDP person who's not mainstream Canadian in the 1950s. That's an outsider perspective. So my parents believed in the equality of women when Canada didn't. My parents believed in all kinds of things that most of Canada didn't. So I don't believe my parents had to dance the Canadian tango. I thought my parents' values were better than local values. And they brought me up with a very strong human rights perspective that Canada didn't have for women. My parents ardently believed that girls and boys should have the same rights. This is in the 1950s. They were not mainstream. My parents believed in Medicare. That's before Canada had Medicare. I think there was one province that had it. My father idolized
Saskatchewan.
Yes, my father. I knew all about it because my father idolized him.
Can I answer you?
So I don't believe you have to dance the local tango. I believe that often you can improve the society that you are part of.
What's the question?
No, but
it's a statement.
The question is...
She asked the question.
No, that's a statement.
Do you agree with that, or do you believe everyone has to come here? And, for example, if you came to the 1950s Canada, in fact, there was stuff like no Jews allowed in this to rent.
Look.
Do you have to accept it?
Look, may I respond?
Yes, please.
Okay, because don't talk when I'm interrupting. Yeah? I know exactly what you're saying. I was a Jew, grew up in Senegal, they more Cordis. And I remember at the Laurentide Hotel, and only no Jews allowed. And I remember the restrictions. And you see, I mean, that's to the process and the general idea that is developing in a particular place, but that is not developing anywhere else. And maybe one of the reasons you came here, because even at the time when there were restrictions against Jews and women were not allowed to vote and so on, my parents and my grandparents were being shot and killed and mutilated and tortured as Jews in the Ukraine. My great-grandfather, whose book I still have, he wrote a book on the laws, the 613 laws, which I still have and treasure, which is in my study. And it's in Hebrew and it's never been translated. When there was a pogrom, he sat behind his desk while his family fled. And he opened the Hebrew Testament. And he read it and he said, I will be saved. God is with me. And the mujiks broke into the house and they split his skull. When my parents came over here, though there was anti-Semitism and violence of a certain kind, and I had to fight my way to school almost every morning when we lived in the francophone quartier of the town, and the school was on the other side near Tour de Lac Street, if you know Saint-Agathe. And in the morning, I would be ambushed constantly. 3, 4 people, I still have, that kind of stuff. And I once ended up in jail for defending myself. The cops put me in the store of glass for a couple of hours before my parents came and took me out. Rescued me because I had fought back. Today we call that contributing to the cycle of violence, if you happen to be Israeli. Right? That's what it was like. But it wasn't having one's skull cleft in two. It wasn't going to sleep at night worrying if there would be these madmen, slavering at the jaws, so to speak, breaking your windows, rushing into the house, killing you, raping your wife, destroying your children in front of you, ripping them up. These literally is what happened to my ancestors. But it happened in the Ukraine. It did not happen in Sherbrooke, at first Halifax and then Sherbrooke, where my mother lived when she came over. There's a difference. What you're talking about is a process that developed here. It did not develop in Gdansk.